out and talking to girls and women, it gave me the opportunity to drop into what I at the time called flow state, which was like everything sinks away. I'm not doing the lines, I'm just there and it's working. And increasingly, I see that you could call it flow state, but you could also call it soul state. It's like this is where that unchosen, authentic part of you is just shining through. And I'm saying things that are offensive, but they're being laughed at. And I'm breaking all the rules, as Robert talked about, from an artistic perspective. But it's going incredibly and it feels great. So that to me is what I'm really wanting to learn more about.
Good to have you on the call, man. You and I have chatted a time or two in the past. You've interviewed me on your channel, and it's good to have you here. I'm gonna read your bio, just so everybody know a little bit about you, and then I want to dive in with you and just go deep into charisma.
Beautiful.
Um, all right, here's his bio. Charlie is the founder of Charisma on Command, the most popular charisma training course and YouTube channel in the world. Man, that's a pretty big statement. That's impressive.
I
Um,
checked it out yesterday. I think
you
they don't
think,
exactly have a Guinness Book of World Records for that, but I did my
yeah,
best.
there should be a spreadsheet somewhere that
Yeah,
just compares, right? You hear people make so many claims, but I tell you what, I don't see many YouTube channels of any kind with close to 7 million followers.
mm,
So I think we'll give you a pass if you don't actually have
I appreciate that.
documented because I think you're kicking ass. Says he teaches people through his YouTube channel to be their most charismatic and confident selves in the moments that matter most. Okay, so Charlie, let's we'll start out with the softballs. The ones that you answer, 1,000 times a year, in interviews when you talk to people. And then we'll go deep. I really do want to dig down deeper than just the hacks, and
Sure.
I'm looking forward to that with you, going even deeper with you. So, what is charisma, and why is it important, especially to men? I mean, this is a men's membership. We got 40 men on this call. We got over 400 men in our program. So, what is charisma, and why is it important?
Yeah. Well, I have answered this 1,000 times, but I have to admit my answer is changing, and it's
I've
really
noticed. I've noticed that,
it's
which is
lovely to
cool.
be with you guys today because I got to say, masculine initiation, nice guy tendencies, people pleasing, these things are all very, very present in my mind, and I'm seeing how some of the way that I experienced and understood charisma, let's say in my 20s, I'm 37 now, had that streak. So there was some that I want to keep and some that is shifting in me right now. So this is a new answer for me, which is I believe that the essence of charisma is letting the deepest and truest part of yourself through in any given moment. I think that the challenge to that for so many of us is that we have so many patterns built up, some of them from middle school and prior, that makes it very, very challenging to follow what is the greatest advice, but is the least easy to follow, which is be yourself. So there was a period of time in my life, and I think in many men's lives, where be yourself is not feasible because that means be the shy, reserved guy who doesn't speak up and who gets walked over. So there was a period of time where that meant actively choosing myself. And when I did that, what charisma was, it was tapping into confidence, the part of me that had self respect, the part of me that didn't allow myself to be walked over, the part of me that did want to engage with the world and was not just that shy introvert, and allowing that to shine through. But there was a lot more active thinking choice about it. And I guess I've gotten interested not just in performing charisma and doing charisma and being the person who can give the toast or talk to the woman or lead the company for a moment, but what does it mean to be that so that it's not turned on, it's let through. And that's what I'm discovering for myself these days.
I love that. And I love your evolution. And I've watched some of your more recent videos and I've listened to you and watched you talk about that transition. And that's some of the deeper stuff I really do want us to dive into. So I'm excited
Mhm.
about that. And I'm glad you're excited about it. Um, and I always have more questions than I ever I ever have time to ask. So I like to just have a conversation. So, I noticed when I got into the dating world in my late 40s, around the early 2000s, pickup was really big. The game was out. I read it. Listen to Double Your Dating, David D'Angelo, and but I noticed, a lot of kind of the pickup going on out there. And what I said, a lot of that early pickup, I've always called it just making geeks with techniques. Basically,
Well
you
said.
take guys that have no social skills, that have no authentic self, and just teach them, the NLP, the lines, the games, the negs, the hypnosis, the everything. And once they got past that, the poll questions, there's nothing there, right?
Hmm.
Once they'd run their game. But one of the things I actually over the last 20 years I've enjoyed watching since I've kind of, just stayed in this whole kind of men's work field, and it's really my focus, is I've watched a lot of those early kind of pickup guys grow up in a sense.
Mm.
They matured. They moved beyond just using lines to now, talking about, social connection and depth. And so it sounds like maybe I heard you make a reference, it kind of like referring to, the artist. The artist has to learn to follow the rules before they can break the rules. And it sounds like
Absolutely.
you've kind of gone through that same process. You got a bunch of rules to help you and help others overcome those patterns. And now you're evolving into how do you use those rules to actually flow into just be you.
Yeah.
And so talk about a little bit about that process, what that's been like for you and how you're teaching that differently now to men.
Yeah. Well, I'm still discovering it, and even trying to make sense of my past is a challenge. It's so fascinating to go back and look at some of these videos. But I think the first leap that probably everyone on this call has already made is I thought that I was a static being. So I was 13 and smart and small and nerdy and shy, and that was just going to be life. So the first leap is that growth mindset that says, I can choose differently. I can change. And with that came, I read the game and did the analysis of the friends of mine that I had that were more outgoing and charismatic. And I got very interested in understanding why, for instance, I would crack a joke in my group of friends, and then the leader would, 15 seconds later say the same thing. And nobody laughed when I said it, and everybody laughed when he said it. So I was going, how is he saying it? Because it's not the words. I said the same thing and nobody cared. What is he doing? I got very interested in the habits. And the beautiful thing about the habits is that they can quickly be tried out, put on, and you can get that positive feedback loop going. So if I start with someone who is really shy, that unwieldy advice of be yourself is not going to take them anywhere. But one piece of advice about how to introduce themselves or something that they can say in conversation can give them that confidence to drop a little bit deeper into relaxation. What tends to happen though is, like you said, you become a geek with the technique, and then you construct entire conversations prior to ever engaging with another person. So you're ready for anything that can come your way, but it's effectively a flow chart. And
Give us an
very
example.
quickly, that was
Yeah, give us an
sure.
example. What is something that the average guy can do just to get grounded, get centered, get in the moment at the start of a conversation, let's say with a stranger? Just
Hmm.
help us drop into that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, and this has been consistent advice. It's been lowering the filter. Many times I've had a client and they've said something to me like, I was with this person, whether it was a boss or a girl or just a personal trainer they were working with, and they asked me a question. I didn't know what to say. I had nothing. They said my mind was blank. I said, that is almost never the case. Right? There was something that you thought, even if that something was, I believe in one case I had a client ask me, he said, "So tell me about yourself. What's your story?" And she said, and my mind went blank. I said, "No, what really went on in your head?" She said, "Well, that's a huge question. Where do I even begin?" I said, "Perfect. Lower the filter and start there." So you asked me the question of, what is charisma? And I know, we help people turn it on in the moments that matter the most. Charisma is the art of leadership. I can read you the definition, but that wasn't what was present in me when we started this call. What was present in me was I was excited to be here. It had been a while since we'd spoken. I felt really magical for me to be having this conversation today. So to lower the filter is an incredibly helpful way, and it allows you to say one more sentence. So this is something else that I'll help with people. A very basic thing that you can do, whether you're in line checking out at a store, you're standing in the elevator, you've walked past a neighbor, is to allow yourself to drop the filter and say one more sentence than you would normally say. So if you step into the elevator bank at somebody in an apartment or somebody in your workplace, maybe all you say is, "Hey, how's it going? Good morning." One more sentence would look like, it could be anything. It could be lazy, like how's the weather? It could be what floor are you going to? Any tough meetings going on today? It could be, oh my God, I'm running so late. My kid just XYZ. Any of that stuff, what you find when you lower the filter and say one more thing, is that people generally are hungry and starving for social connection. And if you give the smallest opportunities, it's the common question is, what do I say to start a conversation? That it doesn't matter. People are generally trying and open to get in if you can just get the ball rolling. From there, the thing that I try to help people doing is to navigate away from that business, sports, politics, whatever that superficial layer of stuff that we'll often start the conversation with, and find ways to quickly share your values in a conversation. So, another thing that we talk about, for instance, is when you are asked any of the most common questions in your life. So, for a lot of people, that's where are you from? What do you do? That kind of stuff. To sit in advance and think through, we actually have a spreadsheet for this in our course, the things in your life that you value that you would love to connect with people over. So, for instance, if I value traveling, I've lived in several different countries, I'm into being an entrepreneur, I love sunshine and summer sports, right? Somebody asked me where I'm from, I could say Philadelphia. Oh, cool. And maybe they were there, maybe they weren't, maybe there's some connection formed. But if instead I take that as an opportunity to share some of my values and let them choose what they hook into, it might be, I grew up on the East Coast, but I did not fit in there. I was kind of like a black sheep. I wanted to start my own thing, and everyone there just did their own. So in college, I left. I traveled all over Latin America, fell in love down there, and eventually moved my business to California just because I could finally afford to move back to the United States because the business did well. And also, it's where it's got all the sunshine for the summer sports that I like. In an answer like that, there's like three or four hooks. For the athlete, he can ask me about the summer sports. For the traveler, he can ask me about what I enjoyed there. For the entrepreneur, he's got that opportunity. So it's about revealing more of yourself without forcing any of it down any particular individual's throat. And it's you give them the chance to sort of choose their own adventure, and these conversations can develop in ways that are intriguing and fun for you, reveal some of the values that you hold and the value that you might have to a potential collaborator, and also keeps conversations fun, fresh, and interesting for you. So that it's not just how about local sports team or pretty hot or pretty cold today.
I like that this is somewhat rehearsed. You've given it some thought
Mm-hmm.
in advance, but it's not just this rote thing that you give. You really do feel into the moment and what you want to share, which is again,
Mm-hmm.
and I love that you talk about being your authentic self, and I love that you're evolving into that space. And I agree with you with all of our patterns covering that up. When I started teaching men to date, I would often say, the most powerful thing you can do is be you. And of course, every guy says, well, my mother always told me that, but apparently that's not working so well because women don't like the me that I am, right? I was
Mm-hmm.
mainly in the dating world. And I also taught them to, go on blurt, go on impulse, just start a conversation, let it unfold. Because we think too much about this stuff. But when guys would say, well, just be me being me doesn't seem to attract women, I would then ask them, how many people do you actually let see the real you?
Mm-hmm.
How often do you look at the real you? I mean, because what I found with most men is that we live in our own shadow world. We keep so many things in, thoughts, feelings, wants, opinions. We hide our sexuality, we hide our behaviors, we ruminate, but we don't let people know what's really going on inside. And in my experience, it's not till really men either get into therapy or get in a group, get a coach, get in a men's group and start opening up and revealing themselves that they really become likable, right?
Mm-hmm.
They can be them real selves. I see that happen in groups all the time, and I'm sure you've seen it people you work with. Once people open up in a safe place and start being real and being transparent and taking a risk and releasing shame, which I want to come back to in a little bit,
Yeah.
they actually become very likable, right? It's those patterns you've talked about that actually keep people at a distance from us, and that's probably what they're meant to do, even though we're very unconscious about that. So
Hmm.
how do you help people kind of start stripping away those patterns and getting real and getting vulnerable and getting authentic and getting transparent? What do you do with that?
I mean, the I am still working on myself. Like this is the next evolution of my business is really getting into this stuff. So I've only shared some of it, but I'll give you in the last 5 years, it's been, I'm 30, in my mid 30s, exactly when Carl Jung would say this stuff starts to kick in, that individuation stage. And yeah, I've had a lot of shadow stuff arise. Shame. I never would have identified myself as a person carrying shame in my 20s. And now my familiarity with it is much increased. So what I've done for myself and what I'm starting to do with the people around me is all sorts of practices that take you from the head into the body. And I love that you started the call
Mm.
with 3D breaths and put your feet on the ground and get there. For me, some of the most powerful ones that I can't yet do from a business perspective necessarily are psychedelics in a guided, facilitated situation have been tremendous for digging through past trauma, recognizing how it's influenced my behavior going forward, and releasing some of those patterns. One that is safe to do every day is breath work. I love holotropic breath work. That brings up, I can't think of anything that is more of a cheat code than holotropic breath work. So if you have not tried it, I highly recommend it. There's plenty of tracks, happy to recommend some. Therapy was the way in for me, but very quickly, I think it's like the safe analytical side enjoys the measured communication, but it quickly becomes about embodied practice. And so now it's all sorts of weird things. I mean, it's the way that I move when I'm alone. Like, am I moving in straight lines? I realized that so much of my life, the way that I worked out, that was so rigid. It had these particular movements. I'm doing a squat, I'm doing a bench press, I'm doing a bicep curl. And increasingly, I find myself wanting to literally move laterally, to do weird stuff that I laughed at those guys in the park who would do the handstands and all that kind of stuff. But that kind of playful, loose movement, it teaches me how much the body and the mind and are interconnected. And so the way that I feel when I move through literally some of those pains in my body, the tightness in my hips, those sorts of things, tends to also these days unlock more comfort socially, which I never would have predicted in the past, but I see it today.
I love that. I mean, just basically, I guess the term for that is embodiment of
Yeah.
you learning to breathe, unlock your hips, loosen your body up, opens up the natural charisma in you that's been locked
Mm,
down. Because again, all of our wounds, you're finding, lock our body down and they become a protection for us. They become an armor to try to keep us safe from future wounds. And then that works against us in terms of having the depth of connection that we deeply crave. And I'm excited for you that you're on this journey. And just, so I watched your recent video where you talked about your experience on Stephen Bartlett, and then
mm,
watched the end of Stephen Bartlett where you talked about some of the painful things you've been getting real with. So I'm excited about being able to kind of dive in more with that. Because
sure.
I watched a bunch of your shorts and your other videos that are great training tools, and I love how you use celebrities and movie characters to illustrate and demonstrate do's and don'ts. But when I watched, it was just this morning actually, I watched your recent video where you talked about your experience on Stephen Bartlett,
Hmm.
and I was so drawn in watching that. As you said, I made all the charisma mistakes. You've been beating yourself up afterwards. You went into detail how much editing they did to cut out, and you were so real and
Mm,
transparent, which I mean, I found you so relatable in that
mm,
because I know, when I'm on podcasts with big name people and I expect I'll be on Stephen Bartlett at some point. I've actually had some communication with their people who reached out to me. So I liked hearing about your personal experience of how you judged yourself and
mm,
critiqued yourself afterwards. That was so real, so authentic that it made me want to watch more and know
mm.
more about you and go deeper into who you are at. It let me see you more than all your other videos combined. So I
Yeah.
just want to applaud that you just got on YouTube in front of your 7 million followers and go, I fucked up the biggest interview of my life. And here's what I learned. Here's what I learned
Yeah.
about myself. So tell us more about that learning
Yeah.
process of what you went through and through your self-criticism to your self-acceptance and how you've released shame around that.
Yeah, I'm happy to. One thing that I will say is that the trade that I'm learning, and I really appreciate you sharing that because it seems that one of the trades that may be a temporary trade that I have to make is mass appeal for depth of connection. And
Mm,
so when I make a video where I take the most popular celebrity and I, pitch it in the widest popular way, I can get 20 million views, that can be intoxicating for a period of time. But none of my friends text me, "Hey, I loved that video." But when I did this Stephen Bartlett video, it got 1/100th of 20, it got, 200,000 or 300,000 views or something like that. But the people that I connect with and admire the most have shared the similar sentiment that you just shared, which is like, I love this. And learning to let go of, it's still mass appeal, but like the mass appeal and allow a depth of connection is it's a training process for me, and it is not one that the algorithm or encourage you is. You're not encouraged to do that. You're not encouraged to aim at depth. You're encouraged to aim at breadth.
mm,
And so I'm learning that. But the story, for those of you who may not be familiar with me or saw it, is that I had been in a protracted uh, legal thing with my co-founder for a long time, and I'm happy to talk about why. But essentially, this growth arc in my life did not match his. And so we were no longer aligned in the business. After about a year, we came to an agreement where I would purchase his half of the business. And like the next day, Diary of a CEO, which is, I think, on any given day, top 5 podcasts in the world, reaches out to me and says, "Do you
yeah.
want to come on the podcast?" So it was this incredible, rejuvenating, magical experience. I show up, and in advance, I'm feeling like I can't do it the same way. I know he's going to ask me all the questions that I've been asked on every podcast. He's going to say, "What is charisma? What are the 5 things that make people dislike you? What shouldn't you do with your hands?" All of the very like tactical stuff that is fun and interesting. And 4 years ago, I would have knocked out of the park. I know it's coming. And I get there, and he asks me these questions, but I'm in this internal war. It's the old me is saying, "Just say the thing, do it this way. You
Mm.
know the answer to this question." And the new me is, "Fuck no. I will not. I will not. I cannot." And so the podcast became internally, there was a battle going on inside of me. And at moments, the old me took the stage and spoke through me. And in moments, the new me took the stage and spoke through me. And afterwards, I was extremely self critical because one of the things that I hate is showing up incomplete. I like having the answer. I like knowing my stuff down pat. I like being clean and crisp in my presentation. And to show up in an incomplete, half formed cocoon stage in front of millions and millions of people was challenging for me. I am still working on the shame. When I watch that video and I see myself wrestle between those two things,
Mm.
I get this intense emotional feeling. It's hard for me to watch that interview for any more than a minute or two at a time still. But I also know that looking back at myself with love is my mission right now. It's what I have
Yeah.
to learn how to do, is to have compassion for my incompleteness, which is not going away ever, I think. So I'm still in the midst of it. But one of the beautiful things that did happen is the I was so intensely critical of myself, but the response was so gracious and kind and loving, and it really put into sharp relief the story that I tell myself about what's going on and how I'm being perceived and all of this kind of stuff is 1,000 degrees more intense and hot than what other people experience of me. And
Always.
so
Always.
that ability to just live in the intensity of my own perfectionism and realize like this is a lie, this is not even true, it's not even supporting you, has been helpful as I start to unpack all the aspects of why that occurs and how it might shift.
I love this story. I mean, I absolutely love it because it is so human, and so real. And I saw some of your Instagram clips where
Mm.
they were clipped from the Bartlett interview and didn't realize that that was a Stephen Bartlett interview until like I think I heard his voice on one of them. I go,
Yeah.
oh, that's an interview with Stephen Bartlett. So I dug a little deeper and saw, your most recent where you critiqued yourself on it. And again, just watching that, I don't know, 14-minute video or something touched my heart because it was
Mm.
so relatable. You were so real. I could relate to it because, again, I see myself on Stephen Bartlett someday, and his 9 million viewers and the anxieties that I will have and the self-critiques I will have of myself. And I'll also probably watch your interview a time or two before I go because, I just to watch, your experience. But I loved, how you without without a lot of self-judgment, you told on yourself and you said, here's
Hmm.
what was up for me in that 14-minute interview. So watching that, then I went to the very end and watched the interview where the end of it, where the very final question that Stephen always asks, where he hands you the question that somebody else wrote on the previous interview. And you just opened up and you even said, oh man, it's kind of late in the interview to go into this. And Stephen just goes, we can take the time. I mean, he was
Hmm.
so just
Yeah.
there. And what I noticed as both a therapist watching you and also having already watched your video about the Bartlett interview is yes, when you were more in your head, and as you now describe, bouncing back and forth, how do I want to present? Yeah, you self-referenced a lot, you touched yourself a lot, you were kind of quick with answers, even though you teach
Hmm.
pause, relax. You seemed stressed and out of your body. But as soon as you got into the emotional stuff, talking about your trauma and your pain, all of that fell away. Now it would come
Mm.
back every now and then, but it just fell away. You quit touching your face. You got more natural.
Mm.
The you got real, and that I think is what you wanted to show up the whole time on
Yeah.
the interview was that realness. But in that question, you got real, and it was powerful to see the difference of when you were struggling with how to show up versus just showing up. It
Mm.
is because I knew what to look for because you'd already said what to look for. And as just as a therapist, seeing the difference between a person who's, more in their head, but then drops into their body. And it's night and day. It's black and white. It's totally. So I just want to say just how powerful that was. And I'm loving having this conversation with you because I see a you that is so authentic, so trustable, so real. And that is what people are craving. That is true charisma. That is truly what attracts people. And I love that you're going through this metamorphosis in life and in your public persona. I think you're going to make an even, as you said, deeper impact on the world. I don't know if it'll be as wide, but it'll go a lot deeper.
Mm. Yeah.
So
Thank you.
what got you started? You mentioned doing the psychedelic journeys. You mentioned here, you mentioned it, you're doing once a quarter with Stephen Bartlett. Uh, what got you started and what got you connected to your shame and how's the psychedelic therapy helping you access and release your shame? Because I'm a big believer in both processes, the psychedelic
Sure.
processes, and I've been working at releasing shame probably for 30 years now when I began in a 12-step group 30 years ago. I know how
Hmm.
powerful it is to begin releasing that shame. What got you started with that and how has that unfolded for you?
So I was about 29 and I was in a position where that I never thought I'd be in. It was every dream that I had set for myself at 23 had come true. And these were dreams that were not meant to come true, maybe ever, but for a very long time. So we'd had millions of subscribers on YouTube, and that had been a goalpost that was, man, if I could get 10,000, or if I get 100, and I'd like set and move the goalpost 4 times. I was dating a girl that I was very into, very attracted to. I had a friend group that was amazing and surround. I was being, recognized on the street. That was never a goal of mine, but people would come up and not just say hi, but tell me how much my content had impacted them. So it was dream life. And then I had a breakup and I felt worse than I've ever felt. And well, I could get another girlfriend. I learned the skills. It wasn't that. It was something was off. And so I had been incredibly, I didn't drink. I didn't do any of that stuff. And a friend was like, I'm going to an ayahuasca ceremony. Do you want to join? And I didn't know what I was getting into, but I said yes. That started my encounter with my wounded inner child came out that first night. And there were many lessons that I've had over the years, but that first one was essentially I encountered this part of myself that was fun and silly and playful and screwing around in the ceremony and messing things up and didn't care and was very joyous. And I was instructed by the shaman, who was a therapist as well, but very intuitive. It said, often when the inner child shows up, it's because there's a pain. And I said, there's no pain. I'm having a good time. And I said, let
Mm.
me check. Are you experiencing any pain? And then it was just like an intense, you've abandoned me. You've spent the last 6, 7 years, nearly a decade. You threw the TV out of your house. You quit playing video games because that's not cool. You don't have fun. You can't. The only time that you're able to relax and enjoy is with your girlfriend. And so I learned that the pain of losing my girlfriend wasn't just I lost this human individual. It was I lost the conduit to allowing myself relaxation, to allowing myself pleasure. And I've since come to realize after many journeys the tremendous projection that I have on women, which is to say that it's only through women that I can experience some of the most beautiful things in life, like pleasure, relaxation, enoughness. All of those things are reflections that I'm allowed when I have deeply satisfied and impressed the woman that I'm with or the women that I am dating or something like that. And so I didn't realize it, but it was a cycle of allowing myself to feel good in a very nice guy way when I had been impressive enough, generally to the woman I was dating or the women that I was, if I was, single and seeing. And reclaiming that has been a huge goal and challenge of mine in the last several years, which is to allow myself to not have to achieve, not have to succeed, not have to impress, and still relax and still enjoy and still feel totally worthy. So, what I would do because I was so hungry for connection, take this guy in my business, is he'd make a mistake in the thing. And I'd say, hey, you messed up in this way, and this way. And what I need you to say is that you did this, this, and this. Because as a kid, I'd got used to feeding my parents the exact way I needed them to love me. I had to spell it out explicitly. What that didn't create was spaciousness and curiosity. So, for instance, you're saying that you're finding that people are not long term oriented and you talked about trust. I don't know if they're showing up one way and another, but it's one thing to show up and say, this is what I need, this is what I want. I can only hang out with people that do this, that, and the other thing. That creates a space where people pleasers will jump in and try to be what you want them to be versus creating spaciousness in those initial interactions to be like, what matters to you? And you can go first sometimes, but genuinely letting them reveal themselves. Because what I have found is that early in dating, both men and women are just trying to be liked at a lot of the time. And so they will say things that correspond for what they think that the other person is looking for. And what I try to do is show up not with my best foot forward, but with my most common foot forward. Like, this is how I am. This is what you can expect from me in month 6. I'm not going to take you to the nicest restaurant on day 1. I'm going to go to the place that I would take you to on a normal, whatever, Friday evening or something like that. Perhaps the question is, how can I show up in a way or in a place that is clear with what I want? Because if you're on dating apps and you're not finding long-term commitment, it seems like the trust piece is already there. What is maybe not there is the fishing in the right pond. So I don't know exactly where, but where are the things that you value that you love to do where other women might be? I would try to switch ponds if I were you, because it doesn't seem like a trust issue. It seems like a hit rate issue. Man, charisma is evolving for me. I'm finding I'm there's a part of me that is ashamed to say it, but I will do it. This is a comfortable group. I have always judged spirituality and religion and those sorts of things, but it's like charisma for me increasingly is letting my soul shine through. And it is so much bigger, wiser. more loving. And that doesn't just mean soft, friendly kisses. That means boundaried and intense at times. It is so much bigger than all of my plans and tactics could ever have accounted for. And increasingly, I realize what I loved about being single was that going out and talking to girls and women, it gave me the opportunity to drop into what I at the time called flow state, which was like everything sinks away. I'm not doing the lines, I'm just there and it's working. And increasingly, I see that you could call it flow state, but you could also call it soul state. It's like this is where that unchosen, authentic part of you is just shining through. And I'm saying things that are offensive, but they're being laughed at. And I'm not breaking all the rules, as Robert talked about, from an artistic perspective, but it's going incredibly and it feels great. So that to me is what I'm really wanting to learn more about. The connection between flow, soul, charisma as almost a transmission of your higher self through and just getting out of the way to do that.